Today, right now, you have more power at your fingertips than entire generations that came before you. Think about that. That's what technology really is. It's possibility, it's adaptability, it's capability. But in the end, it's only a tool. What's a hammer without a person who swings it? It's not about what technology can do, it's about what you can do with it. You're the voice, and it's the microphone. When you're the artist, it's the paintbrush. We are living in the future we always dreamed of. We have mixed reality that changes how we see the world, and AI empowering us to change the world we see. You have more power at your fingertips than entire generations that came before you. So here's the question, what will you do with it?
Καλώς ήρθατε και πάλι. Κάποιες έννοιες στην τεχνητή νοημοσύνη μπορεί να μας μπερδεύουν. Ας πούμε για μένα, ίσως και για κάποιους από εσάς, δεν είναι απολύτως ξεκάθαρη η διαφορά ανάμεσα στην ευφυΐα και τη συνείδηση. Αυτές οι έννοιες δεν μπερδεύουν τον Sean Alexander. Ο Sean Alexander είναι Principal Director της Microsoft AI του Microsoft Corporation. Ασχολείται εδώ και πάνω από 20 χρόνια με την τεχνητή νοημοσύνη και δουλεύει με πάνω από 200 πελάτες ετησίως για να σχεδιάσουν τη στρατηγική της AI. Για τη δουλειά του στη Microsoft έχει κερδίσει και πολλά βραβεία.
Παρακαλώ, υποδεχτείτε στη σκηνή απευθείας από τα κεντρικά της Microsoft στο Seattle τον κύριο Sean Alexander, Principal Director για το Microsoft AI.
Well, good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here from Redmond, Washington. Very excited and appreciative to Peggy and team for their hospitality over the past few days and, of course, putting on this wonderful event. Though I do have to question the intelligence of putting an engineer on stage right after Garry Kasparov, my hero. I'm going to run a little bit amok. So I'm very excited to talk about intelligence. That's actually a good place for us to start. We've been talking a lot about the definitions of artificial intelligence over the past few hours. I thought today what I'd cover with you is kind of a subset of what my team of senior engineers discusses with senior executives at most of the Fortune 100 companies in charting their own AI strategy. And so since we're starting off with getting grounded, let's start off with that question of what is intelligence? Well, intelligence is the ability to apply and acquire new knowledge and new skills. And as Gary talked to us briefly about earlier, this concept and the concept of artificial intelligence was born in the times of antiquity here in Greece, where the ancient philosophers debated and used symbology to describe the machinations of how the mind worked. And as we think about the future of artificial intelligence, what I'm going to take you through is a brief history that I think might scare you a little bit about how quickly things are changing, but will also get us grounded as we start to chart our future in how we embrace AI for the positive growth of humanity. So with that, each of us have our own definitions of AI, and this is where I actually start most of my executive presentations. I'll take a C-suite group of CIOs, CTOs, CEOs, and I'll ask the question, anybody want to give me the definition of AI? That's when I get that. The nervous the laughter, the pregnant pauses. Nobody's quite sure how to think about it. Well, the way I think about it is AI is really a tool. It's not a strategy. It's a suite of technologies that enable you to reason over massive amounts of data, derive new understanding, where just throwing human bodies, human capital at the problem will not derive that understanding, and ultimately, new ways of more natural interaction. I spent a good portion of my career working on Xbox, building a 9-figure business. I was a part of the launch team for Kinect, which for about 2 weeks was the fastest-selling consumer electronics device. And then Steve Jobs released the iPad. Thank you, Steve. And the thing that was most exciting to me is that this is actually the most exciting point in my career. We've heard a lot of numbers bandied about. We've seen Gartner. In fact, I was at Gartner Symposium last year, both in North America and in Barcelona. And there was one thing that was evident. Their clear message was, regardless of industry, if you're not experimenting, testing, and deploying artificial intelligence within your organization, we can guarantee you that we are talking to your competitors who are. So 1.2 trillion is a scary number, as Peggy said earlier. But let's kind of unpack that a little bit. Because we've been talking about this concept of AI for going on 60, 70 years. The idea actually came out of Dartmouth, out of a think tank over summer. And when you think about AI, it's actually two distinct disciplines. You first have machine learning, which for those of us those of you who have worked in financial services, you know that machine learning is about algorithms, it's about calculus, it's about probability, and it's keeping the human in the middle of figuring out how all of those pieces play together to derive better decision making. But there's also this small area, this area of experimentation that's existed around something called deep neural networks. And the concept has been, can we teach a computer to mimic the neurons in a human brain and to think like a human? Now, there's a whole discipline around artificial general intelligence. You might hear of OpenAI, which was originally funded by Elon Musk of Tesla and others. And they're actually going after artificial general intelligence using deep neural networks. Now, what I can tell you is my data scientists who have been around a couple decades tell me, when I was in school at university and talked to my graduate or my PhD advisor and told them that I want to go into deep neural networks, they said, no, 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 no. That's where smart people go for their careers to die. You don't want to do that. Now those same individuals are ping-ponging between all the majors commanding seven-figure salaries as basically the new rock stars in the industry. So why now? What happened? Let's unpack that a little bit. We talked about data earlier today. Data is the fuel. Data, in terms of putting data into the cloud, presents tremendous opportunity. And once you put those two together, that enables breakthrough algorithms and experimentation to be enabled. So I'm going to unpack each of these three, starting off with data. We are in the midst of a data tidal wave. If we chart out the transition from analog to digital, we have seen a tremendous growth, but it peaked out in 2015. About that time, actually it was a few years before that, I was in a meeting with a director. His name's James Cameron. He made a movie called Avatar. And he was talking to our CTO, and he said, hey, I want to build this movie. It's going to be entirely done in special effects. It's a big sci-fi thing. It's going to be multiple movies. And he said, I want Microsoft to build the render farm that I use for all of my visual effects. I don't care how you use that during the rest of the time, but every night I need to be able to use it for my dailies. And I need 100% of it for when I want to do the final cut of the movie. And so our CTO said, sure, give me a check. And we built it. And that is the great-great-grandparent of what's now known as the Microsoft Cloud. And when you look at how data is exploding in the cloud, all of our devices here in the room, I would argue that the majority of you are seamlessly taking all those photos that you've been taking throughout the day and uploading it into a cloud. It might be the Microsoft Cloud through OneDrive or others. But this tidal wave has happened just over a 30-year period. And that's staggering to think about the amount of data. When I work with healthcare companies and we talk about electronic medical records, we're talking about terabytes of data per patient per year in terms of the amount of data that will now need to be crunched and consumed as a part of this new cloud. Now, in terms of AI, we've been talking about for 60 years, but something happened in 2012 that got us out of the AI winter. The AI winter was we had the promise of AI twice before, but it failed. Last in the early 80s, when government funding in the United States and others decided to dry up. But something happened in 2012 that now we're all talking about it again, so let me take you on a little journey. So in 2012, 12 engineers came up with a novel new approach in the Bay Area. And what they wanted to do was build a system that could detect an animal, an object, from an image. and discern it better than any other system that existed in the world. So they built a system that's designed to mimic the human brain. And they took 16,000 CPUs, over 1 billion images, and 3 days crunched to do this. Oh, and by the way, no, that's not actually, that is 16,000 processors. So that gives you a sense of the scale of what we're talking about. Anybody want to hazard a guess as to what they were looking for? What was the object that they were looking for? That's right, cats on the internet. And a million memes were born out of this one experiment. 16,000 processors to find a cat. So that was in the summer. The winter that same year, two PhD candidates and their advisor came up with a novel new approach for building a deep neural network that didn't use CPUs but used graphics processing units, the ones that we've been putting into Xbox for years and into PCs. And with that novel approach, they took it to the world's leading competition, ImageNet, and swept the competition. It was a fundamental breakthrough where now we're able to use this brand new chip architecture and move beyond what historically we've thought of in terms of Moore's law. Most of you probably know, except for maybe some of the university students watching, this guy. He started it all at Intel. Moore's law. The concept is computing power doubles and the price halves about every 2 years. Well, let's chart that out. He came up with that hypothesis in 1965, and by 1995, when Windows 95 came out, we were at 5 million processors on a single Pentium chip, which is about the population of New York City and the 5 boroughs, or about half of Greece. That was 1995. Then we get to 2005, and now we have 160 million transistors. So now we're about the population of the Eastern Seaboard. And then 10 becomes 20, 20 becomes 40, 40 becomes 80. And in only a 5-year period, we now pass 1 billion transistors. Now, I'll tell you, during this time period, I actually was meeting with Bill Gates. We were preparing for a public presentation that we were working on. And what was rare for him, he actually, it was the end of the day, he had some idle time at the end. So we sat around and kind of shot the bull back and forth. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm spending time with Bill Gates one-on-one. And he had just come back from a meeting with the Xbox team where he was talking about this breakthrough we had just had in wireless technology that was going to enable low latency for console gaming so that we could remove the wire from the controller. And I asked him about AI, because we were making a lot of investment in the space. And he said, well, you know, that we're still waiting for processing to catch up. We're going to continue to invest. And invest we did. The journey continues in terms of processing. We hit 7.6 billion processors in 2015. This is another way of looking at it. Moore's law has been shattered. When you see 7 billion processors in 2015, let's take it another step. When I updated this for 2017, with this update, 7 billion processors shipped in Xbox One. So in a 2-year period, we went from the maximum transistors in a processor to now it's available in a game console. We hit 16 billion processors in 2017, which is twice the population of the globe. And where we are today is 6 times the population. We have hit 50 billion transistors in a field programmable gate array. This is a software programmable chip optimized for artificial intelligence that has basically taken us to a 50x multiplier in 1 year. I'm going to put this another way. Hopefully this will be more grounded for all of us. So we all have our phones, right? So we probably get, what, about a day's worth of battery life out of it, if we're lucky, especially heavy users like me. Well, Greg Brockman, who's the CTO of OpenAI, had a chance to work with him about a year ago, and he put it this way. He said, you don't understand the amount of compute. We can do thousands of years of compute in a single day. It's the equivalent of going from 24 hours of battery life, upgrading your phone the next year, and now 500 years between charges. 10 years ago, my data scientists would go ahead and try a simulation, wait 24 hours for that simulation to run. Now those simulations run in 10 milliseconds. That gives you a sense of how fast this is moving. If data is the fuel and the cloud is the catalyst, then the algorithms are the engine of innovation, which enables experimentation and major breakthroughs. Microsoft has been investing through Microsoft Research since the early 90s on artificial intelligence. To give you a sense of some of the major breakthroughs, in 2016, we broke through the ResNet algorithm for image recognition and achieved human parity in all three areas of the competition. The next thing we did is we open sourced that technology, that algorithm. In fact, most of the majors in the industry are actually using derivations of our ResNet algorithm and just building their own tuned classifiers. For speech recognition, I grew up in a family in the banking industry. My father showed me banks of tapes as a trader. If there was any sort of confusion over a trade that was happening, they would go to the tape to play it back. Now, financial services institutions and auditors like KPMG are using technology, voice transcription, that is better than humans because we broke through the switchboard competition in 2017. For 30 years, we've tried to build a system that can understand and transcribe over a phone line as well as a human. And now we have not only exceeded that, but we now do it better than a professional translator at the United Nations. That brings me to the next point, machine reading comprehension. When you stack multiple AI algorithms on top of each other, you move beyond just phonetic understanding of language. You move to semantic understanding, understanding the context of what's being discussed. We can now take live Chinese broadcasts off of national television, run them through our translation system, and it transcribes into English better than a professional translator. And most recently, just in the past 2 months, last month, I'm ahead, already living in the future, with Stanford's COCO challenge. This is basically 160,000 Q&A pairs that are loaded into a system. It's kind of like the Turing test for bots. And we have achieved human parity and currently occupy the top leaderboard position using a mix of algorithms that come from us and others in the industry. And that's a key point in terms of Microsoft's strategy. We are now all open source. We are all about making these technologies available to others. And to show you how all of this is coming together, I want to show you a video of AirSim. This is one of our open source projects in Microsoft Research. What you're seeing is a drone in a virtual world built on top of the Unity game engine with multiple sensor packs. You can see infrared, you can see radar, you can see computer vision. And what this drone is being trained to do is to basically chase power lines, replacing a $5,000 an hour helicopter to look for cracks in insulation, other points that require maintenance. Humans are not training this drone. It's training itself through trial and error, through thousands of years of simulation inside of this autonomous environment. We have moved beyond machine learning to machine teaching. And this new system is also capable of supporting automobiles and is currently being used by major automobile manufacturers as a part of their experimentation on how to build smarter and more effective artificial intelligence systems. As an aside, my wife is a 14-year veteran US Air Force pilot, combat pilot. She is also a commercial airline pilot. She is much cooler than me. You should have had her here on stage. She is truly Captain Marvel. And when I talked to her about artificial intelligence over the dinner table, the first thing that she says is my job safe? And my answer is, honey, you are perfectly fine because the human needs to stay in the middle. So fortunate for the two of us and her career, we're a ways off from aircraft being able to do this en masse for commercial airliners. But it gives you a sense of where we're going. So returning to this concept, if machine learning is mature and deep neural networks are relatively new, what we've seen is this explosion in deep learning. And higher education has yet to catch up. We had a conversation yesterday, a group of us, and we were talking about the challenge of maintaining and recruiting and retaining talent inside of the computer science programs and the data science programs focused on mathematics. And my feedback was, if we're starting in secondary education, we're starting too late. We need to be starting in elementary education. We need to be getting them when they're 10 and 11 years old. In fact, within Microsoft, we have a program called TEALS, where we are retraining our own employees and deploying them into middle school, where students are basically being taught computer science at a very early age. And that's an exciting, exciting time. It's an exciting time to be a part of the community. And so what I'm showing you here is part of the reason why you're not seeing Microsoft put some sort of fancy name on top of its AI. What we're doing is we're talking about the intelligent cloud and the intelligent edge. I worked on our Build Developer Conference 3 years ago and led our artificial intelligence team in Harry Shum's keynote, our executive vice president. And we had this debate with Satya, our CEO. And Satya said, let me be very clear. AI is a buzzword. The intelligent cloud and the intelligent edge, and making that intelligence in such a way that it's doing its job and you don't even know it's there, is the answer. And that is what I want to talk about. So over the past 3 years, my team of engineers has been working alongside, coding with many different companies around the globe, largely Fortune 500 companies, some startups doing some interesting things in different applications, and all of them start off with this concept of where do we start? Well, my team has put together a pattern, a series of patterns. In fact, what I'd like to do is share it with you, and we'll kind of go through this journey, and I'd like to chart with you kind of a blueprint for how you can think about incorporating a culture of AI within your own organization. The first step is within your own leadership team, taking inventory of the resources that you have within your organization. Now, this happened within Microsoft in kind of a subtle way. Actually, not so subtle. It was one of the largest reorganizations in Microsoft history. The first thing that we did is we took all of our resources across the company focused on AI, and we put them all into a central organization. Then, 18 months later, within a few months, we blew it up. And we kept the core research group, and then we moved and redeployed our AI talent across and infused it into every one of our product groups. That was a very deliberate decision in both steps. The first step was for us to take inventory of the talent that we already have within our organization. And I will tell you that data scientists and developers focused in the space, there are those who are passionate about the research and the experimentation, the academia, and they should be nurtured and supported within your organization. Trying to deploy them into product groups will not be successful. But those that are passionate about experimentation and building product and shipping product should be deployed into those organizations. But knowing where to start and where to deploy that talent is where our AI journey starts. The first step, and you've heard it multiple times today, and I'm going to say it again, AI will not do you any good without a solid data estate in the cloud. You need the cloud in order to be able to train the systems that enable AI, regardless of whether they're pre-trained AI or you're doing custom AI. One of my colleagues, Judson Althoff, likes to say, AI is only as good as the data that you put into it. Otherwise, you're making the most confident bad decisions in your organization. The way that we think about this is in terms of different entry points. Starting off with BI before AI. You have to understand and be able to report out and slice and discuss and analyze what's happening within your organization through business intelligence before you can even start thinking about how to apply artificial intelligence. This is where we see many organizations trip up. And by the way, I am also speaking to the engineers in the room. The culture change that my team went through in terms of telling them that on a monthly basis we were going to be running all of our engineering reviews, our monthly reviews in Power BI, there was much gnashing of teeth. I frankly felt like I was a part-time therapist and was minoring in organizational design because they couldn't get over this concept of, wait, we're out of PowerPoint? Like, I thought I would just send you a bunch of stuff, and as a middle manager, you're responsible for figuring out the rest. It's like, no, you own the numbers. You're responsible. We're all responsible for that. So BI is the place to start. And then on top of that, you can start to wire up applications that enable you to take advantage of that. From there, you can talk about pre-trained SaaS with AI. And this is what 90% of the executives I meet with say. It always starts with, yeah, but. Yeah, but. Can't you just offer me pre-trained AI? I just move the data into the cloud, and then your SaaS solutions just do the magic on top and give me the insights? Well, we're working on that, and I'll take you through that. But before you do that, you need to make sure that your data estate is groomed through things like the common data model. We're working with other majors in the industry, such as SAP and Adobe, through the Open Data Interconnect, or Interchange, to enable schemas of data so that the data can talk to each other, and we can move from these silos, these systems of record, break down those silos, and now we can build systems of intelligence that ride and look for signals across your ERP, your CRM systems, your marketing systems, the open graph of the internet. All of this comes together. And only once you have all of those wired together are you ready to start diving into AI accelerators and doing custom AI. So from a Microsoft perspective, we have Power BI, which I refer to. Power Apps enables anybody to basically, on a canvas similar to PowerPoint, go ahead and wire together a number of different data sources or data flows, run a query, and basically build an application. The majority of line of business applications that I see being built right now are using tools like Power Apps because they democratize app development within your organization. Now, for my .NET developers in the room, don't be afraid, our jobs are still secure. But the fact is that that democratization frees up your time to be able to work on higher valued opportunities. And the last one is in terms of Flow. This is Microsoft Flow, which is our process automation tool, where you can wire together literally hundreds of different data sources across Office and the open internet. I actually receive an automatic notification, a text message, every time my boss sends me an email. He often comments, wow, you're always on top of it. Yeah, that's because I'm getting that text message, so I know to respond to you first. But Flow has other interesting applications within my organization that fields so many of these executive requests. Folks in my team who are responsible for doing triage were getting mired down in the email back and forth, and I challenged them. I said, go ahead and learn Microsoft Flow. Implement it and instrument it. We did, and within 30 days, we were able to calculate that of the core team of 4 that were responsible for this, each of them were saving 8 hours a week in terms of back and forth and email just by process automation using Microsoft Flow. And you can do some really interesting things with that technology. In terms of the pre-trained SaaS, yeah, but I want to be able to take that technology, just give you the data, put it in the cloud, my cloud, it's safe, it's secure. But then for areas like CRM and market intelligence, I want new signals, new abilities to derive insights inside of the market data that I already have. Well, most people don't realize that we just spent the last 4 years rebuilding Dynamics 365 from the ground up with an eye towards artificial intelligence. And we're in the process of releasing market intelligence, customer service, and sales intelligence solutions that enable you to take basically the same intelligence that we're now using within Microsoft's own Salesforce and marketing organization. We're taking the best of what we've done, incubating that technology over the past 4 years, and now making that available to you. My team, previously known as the Business AI team, built a bespoke solution for doing a virtual agent for Microsoft. We started off just doing it for Windows. And then we went to Scott Guthrie, who runs the Azure organization, and he said, you better not screw up my relationships with my customers. I'm not going to go ahead and turn a virtual agent loose on them. So we built a pilot, we instrumented it, and we invited people to engage with the virtual agent in North America. We geofenced it. We now see that the virtual agents can handle over 70% of all customer requests from Azure to Xbox without issue. It's unbelievable, the amount of performance that we're seeing out of that. And what happens is through deep reinforcement learning, a deep neural network reviews all the chat dialogues every night and retunes and reprograms the conversation flows to help you get to your answers faster. That technology is now going into our visual designer for virtual agents in Dynamics 365. So Dynamics 365 and this Power Platform, look, I'm an engineer. I'm not here to sell the product, but I'll tell you that this is so important and such a great opportunity because when you think about it, the majority of the world compute runs inside of business applications and line of business solutions. This is the next big area for innovation. In fact, you're actually the first group of friends I'm telling. I'm actually moving from my current role into this organization to run the ISV program because I believe it is that strategic and that important and the first beachhead for breadth adoption of AI. So going through that, once you move past pre-trained SaaS, you build a bench of your own capability within your own organization. We have two abilities with AI platform and accelerators. We have pre-built AI, which Philippe talked about earlier today. We also have custom AI models in an open platform that supports every framework. If you want to use TensorFlow from Google, you can go ahead and do that. Keras, PyTorch, we don't care. Our platform fully supports it. The data scientists need to be empowered to be able to support any one of their platforms. And so as we've been building on top of this solution, and been building these solutions, what we've identified is basically 5 core patterns for AI solutions that I challenge each of you to go back within your senior leadership team and try to use this taxonomy in terms of looking for specific opportunities for experimentation. Here's the model that we found has worked. You identify a specific business problem that you're trying to improve performance on. You identify one metric. You figure out the data that can be used to train. And then you do experimentation. That should be time boxed to somewhere between 4 to 8 days of development time maximum. Within that time box, you can keep a team focused. And let's not kid ourselves. About 80% of AI is actually getting data into a format that you can do something interesting with it. So that's the pre-work before you get to that 4 to 8 days. I worked with a major airline recently on a system where after 2 days of hacking together, they got nervous because at night they were running simulations against their own existing system. And our system was so much more performant by putting our developers and the diversity of thought between us and their own developers that they started to get nervous about, oh gosh, is Microsoft going to go give this to another company and one of our competitors? And our answer was no, the source code is yours. Go do with it. Deploy it in your organization. Build on it. That's the model. It starts off with this new generation of business agents. Start experimenting with your employees. Do not start with your customers. Person, object, and activity detection. You saw Arisim as an example there. Retail is a huge area for us right now. We showed what we're doing in terms of the marketplace of the future just last week at our Build Developer Conference. AI-assisted professionals. Holy cow, is this an area. I have 2 sons. They're 15 and 11. And when they come to me and ask me, Dad, what should I do for my career? Like, how did you figure out what you wanted to do? I said, well, don't do what I did, because I basically rewrote my major in pencil because I change it so often. But what I do encourage you to do is look at what Bill Gates has been saying. Bill Gates in 2017 challenged university students that there are 3 areas that you should consider going into for your career. The first one, AI. The second one, energy, specifically renewable resources. And number 3 was biosciences. Then I told my sons, do not become radiologists, because that's probably not going to be a good decision for you, because that is actually one of the areas that we're seeing AI really starting to take off. We've got some really interesting projects that we've been working with universities around the globe, where you can now snap an image of a chest X-ray out in the field of Africa and immediately run it through an AI model and identify one of 14 different major conditions. And that is a system that we built in less than 6 months. Knowledge mining and autonomous systems. We talked about RPA and robotics process automation. We have a suite of tools that enable any developer to become an AI developer through our cognitive services. Through our custom vision service, which you can go to at customvision.ai, you can take a couple dozen images and train up a model that can identify a tool. Or in my case, my wife didn't understand what I do for a living. So over coffee one morning, I built up a model that actually identifies different aircraft based on an image. She's like, okay, now I get it. You put pictures on the internet and push a button, and now you get down what kind of airplane it is. Now, there's a number of different areas, speech and search and language, that we're working on. Decision is another key area that we just launched, where we're now offering a personalization service where you provide your data to train it, and it will provide recommendations right inside of our service. And all of these are generally available in all of our major data sources around the globe. So I'd like to show you a quick video. Telefonica Aura has now deployed in 4 countries in Europe a solution where they embraced our cognitive services and have built an entirely new experience on top of their own personified AI with Aura, which invites consumers to engage and be entertained in new and more interesting ways in their own organizations. So let's go ahead and play the video.
As an engineer, I believe in constantly moving forward. I love that feeling of progress. I'm finding new ways to get there. So, how do you move a company forward? Telefonica has nearly 100 years of history.
Imagine being part of a team in which you can find data scientists, data engineers, you can find designers, linguists, researchers.
We connect millions of people every day with technology. We want to bring them into the future. With AI, the moment was right to find a new path. So we transform again. We have become data-driven. Okay, Aura. Our conversational AI, Aura, lets us put people first.
We are using artificial intelligence to change the way we are relating to customers. One of the reasons we began to use Microsoft technologies was because it offered an open framework.
It was very easy for all my development team to understand the tools.
We can very fast and very easy move into the use cases we want to develop for our customers.
Using tools like Azure Bot Service and Luis, we keep getting new insights and we are applying them into our core business. Microsoft AI was a key piece in our strategy because they have the tools, the platform, the full ecosystem that we needed. Today, technology is learning our language instead of the other way around. With Microsoft AI, we are forging new paths. This is what drives us as developers.
So what's interesting about Telefonica is they actually have a global footprint with 3 different countries in South America. But each of them have their own CTO who gets to make his or her own technology decisions. And so when I met with the team at Gartner Symposium Barcelona last year, they were about 2 months away from initially launching Aura in Spain. And they said, boy, we really better not screw this up because we want all the CTOs around the globe to be able to adopt it. And I'm happy to say that they are all adopting Aura and using our cognitive services as a part of that solution. The other big area, the big rock that we see in line of business applications and embracing AI, is making sense out of all of the disconnected and unstructured data that exists inside of our systems. When you think about records, for example, handwritten forms. We actually just released a new forms recognizer last week. The forms recognizer, in addition to our ability to discern location information off of images, to be able to reason over that, to be able to do everything from taking data from the open graph of the internet. With our Azure Search product, we're now offering a new suite of cognitive services that are 30 times faster than what were available just a few months ago. And what this does is it builds a semantic map on top of all of that data and creates a fully text searchable rich index. And so as one of the projects that we've been working on, we recently worked with the Metropolitan Museum of Art and did a hack with them and MIT to see what we could do with this if we were to take their open data data set that they have where they've digitized all of the works at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and now enable creative expression and allow the humanities to use AI in new and interesting ways. So let me play a quick video.
For us, it's important to understand the Met is not just a place that you visit. It's really a great service to an audience all around the world.
We believe we have one object that can inspire every single person in the planet. How can we reduce the distance between each of those people and the object that will inspire them? In February 2017, the museum made the decision to release all the images and data of our public domain artwork, free of any copyright restriction.
We are photographing all of our 2 million objects that the Met houses. Our task is really to share our collection, to disseminate our knowledge to as many people as possible.
Now we want to ask a question. Using AI technologies, what can people build on that? We've brought together teams from the Met, Microsoft, MIT, and we have a hackathon happening.
We can create experiences around art that really have never been seen before because the technology we have today has never been available before.
Artificial intelligence finds patterns that the human eye doesn't capture, and we start actually learning about ourselves better than we probably knew already.
One way that we preserve culture is to give people tools to create new things with it and to spread those creations across the globe.
Because these two worlds of tech and art are bleeding closer together, that creates a fertile ground for new projects and perspectives on technology that we can't yet even predict. So to me, it feels a bit like a renaissance.
This is the museum of the world, about the world, and for the world. Here tonight to celebrate our new and really important partners, MIT and Microsoft. You will see here outcomes of our first collaborations.
AI is enabling us to actually play with the data itself, to generate new narratives. And then on the other hand, being creative has always pushed technology beyond its boundaries. I hope that people will start to see some of the promise that it holds to be a more inclusive and a diverse platform for people to jump in and play in.
As a museum experience starts becoming more than just a visit to a museum, we're looking at the space of what we can do in a virtual world. The more people become aware, actually, what's in the Met is relevant to me. But ultimately, it's those ideas we want people to take away with them. It's for connections to culture, for connections to history.
So that gives you an example, and actually two of the projects that I thought were most interesting. One, you can snap an image on Instagram, and it automatically matches it with a comparable design out of the collection. The other is as you start telling a story, it automatically starts pulling visuals that are contextually relevant and playing behind you as you're telling the story out of the collection. Really exciting stuff. I'm going to bring it back to business here, and we're going to close here quickly. I want to show you an example of an organization that went through a digital transformation journey. The CFO of this organization said that she wanted to change 2 core metrics. She wanted to be able to report out to Wall Street faster and be more accurate. So as a part of that, it starts with data on one end and action on the other. BI before AI, identifying what happened and why did it happen. Applying advanced analytics and AI within your organization, and starting to automate those rote processes. This organization spent a lot of time in finance and spreadsheets, reasoning up the stack in the management chain. Through automation, they were able to remove that waste. We talk as Microsoft about these graphs of data. You have the open internet, you have your personal graph, your personal information, you have your office graph. Now, through M365, we have new signals that we can make available. Within our organization, this is actually Microsoft. This was a 5-year endeavor to completely retool our finance organization. And what you're seeing here is an overlay of all the different data sources that we now use. Our CFO, Amy Hood, had the vision 5 years ago to start experimenting by embedding data scientists and developers in the organization, but it's the metrics that matter. With only a 14% increase in headcount, we saw an 89% increase in revenue growth by using artificial intelligence, and now our sales organization uses AI to reason over. The human is still in the middle, but each level of management now uses that as a guidepost, using macroeconomic data as well as signals from within the organization, including engineering on how fast we can deliver our products. The human in the middle brings me to the point of trust. We've talked a lot about trust and the importance of having a code of ethics. And I want to tell a quick story about responsible AI. Satya has a council called the AI 365 that gets together about every 2 weeks, where we collaboratively review improvements and progress in AI across the entire company. But this is not a tops-down review. It is ensuring that we are connecting the different teams and sharing in those innovations. We have innovations that came out of Xbox on how to spin up data clusters faster that went into Azure as a result of this. But one that we really screwed up on was facial recognition. I was in the room about this time last year. And our chief data scientist responsible for our Face API got up in front of the entire leadership team and she said, we screwed up. The training set for data that we used for facial recognition was overly indexed on male Caucasians. And as a result, MIT is about to release a report that shows that we have a 20% error rate on women and individuals of color. Satya was quiet for a moment, and then he asked, OK, we're going to do the root cause analysis to understand how this happened, right? Yes. He looked at Frank Shaw, who runs our PR department. He says, Frank, I want us to come clean on this and share that root cause analysis with the rest of the community. We all need to learn from this together. Brad Smith, our president and chief legal counsel, weighed in and said, we have to think thoughtfully about this as a part of our Ether Council that is establishing our code of ethics as a company. The room got quiet. And then Satya said, while we're fixing this, can we also fix the fact that every time I put my hands underneath an automatic wash basin, it never goes on? Is it that it can't recognize the color of my skin? The entire room erupts into laughter. We all understand that Satya knows it's not the same technology, but he used it as a disarming moment. It was a teachable moment that I encourage all of us as senior leaders to encourage failure within your own organization, that experimentation, that spirit of shared learning and collaboration within your organization. I want to leave you with one last thought. What I just showed you is the building blocks that exist for our generation. Our children's generation are going to use an entirely new set of building blocks, standing on the shoulders of the giants that are building artificial intelligence today. Of course, we'll have AI, but mixed reality will go so far beyond what you see with HoloLens 2. With our mixed reality headsets, we were able to cut the cost in half through artificial intelligence and object detection. Blockchain, bit buzzwordy. Here's a real-world problem that we're solving right now. We had a massive romaine lettuce recall across all of North America, every grocery store, due to an E. coli outbreak, and we could not figure out, as a social community, where this came from. We are now working with major retailers and agri-tech providers so that we'll be able to go to the 1 meter by 1 meter plot and identify exactly where an affected area is coming from using blockchain technology. And quantum. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about quantum, but I want to leave you with one thing. We believe that quantum computing, we will have in Azure a fully in-production quantum computer within 5 years. There are 4 major research institutions working on this problem around the globe. To give you a sense of how disruptive and what opportunity exists, if I were to try to build a system that was to simulate a drug interaction in a human body, it would take all of the compute power that we have in the entire world 1,000 years in order to run that simulation. We believe that within ours and our children's lifetime, that will happen over a coffee break when provided with the right data. Data is the fuel. Data is everything when it comes to artificial intelligence. The world runs on software. AI is a tool. AI just makes it better. Thank you for your time.
Sean, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Working with hundreds of clients, what's the most impressive case study you've seen?
The most impressive case study, I would have to say, was probably HoloLens shipping to the International Space Station. The first time that we tried to do it, it actually blew up on a SpaceX rocket, but Elon got that fixed the second time around. And seeing astronaut Scott Kelly using HoloLens, in fact, a lot of the work that we're putting into Dynamics right now around remote assist, where you can have an expert helping you remotely for manufacturing, came from that initial experimentation.
And is there a thing, something that you would like, or you would envy to see being created?
Oh boy, you're the genie and I get my wish?
Yeah.
As a parent of 2 children that are differently abled, who have learning disabilities, I would love for us to take learning to a point where each of them have individualized education systems that over time help them to overcome their obstacles.
So perhaps we're going to see something of this. We're already seeing it.
We're working with the company on it right now.
Good. Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much.